to long, dumb connections between remote villages with small populations.
Yeah, really dumb. How dare they? I love when, dude, I fucking love when neolibs are just like, it's so stupid. Why did they do that? Like, imagine getting mad at a country that is trying to quite literally do something that you consider dumb because that something is like offering accessibility in the interest of even development across the board, even to rural areas. Economics Explained is misled about induced demand. His excuse of a video gives me an opportunity to talk about steam engines, G, and drifting.
I wonder what I'll find on YouTube today. Surely it won't be some infographics channel trying to convince you that a subject is factual when it's actually just an opinion piece wrapped in good stock footage and editing. Oh no!
Friend of the show, Alan Fisher, once again with a banger. Let's take a look.
There are two kinds of people that study economics. Those who take everything at face value from graphs and data, and those who go outside. Today we're going to talk about Economics Explained's video about induced demand and economies of scale. In this video, the Turbo Nerd discusses both concepts using real-life examples, but unfortunately the examples that they use are right up my alley, and like usual, anyone who isn't a planner or foamer will incorrectly point to non-issues as problems, while avoiding talking about the real issues that plague our built infrastructure. So, let's jump in and talk about the issues presented, while also using...
I know Alan is from Philadelphia. I know.
this video as a good opportunity to dissect some relevant topics along the way. So, this video starts off into a section on economies of scale and how these can affect production, etc., etc. It's hard to screw up the definition and examples of economies of scale, so he does an okay job here. I have some gripes on the specific examples that he uses, because it's sort of unfair to compare a developed process with an undeveloped process of manufacturing. Comparing two levels of technology together is not the best way to show off economies of scale. A good example of economies of scale is showing two scenarios with the same technology but different methodology. So, since you're here on my channel, a great example in history of economies of scale would be American superpower locomotives. You see, no matter what time in history, fundamentally railroads have always hated two specific things with a passion: labor and maintenance. These two operating expenses have historically driven railroads to do the most goofy shit possible. And one of those goofy things was superpower steam locomotives. In the era just before diesel trains took over, railroads were trying to find ways to minimize those two operating expenses. And the main two problems with steam engines happen to be: 1. Individual engines require a lot of maintenance downtime to fix parts and lubricate joints. And 2, you can't connect two controls of two different steam locomotives together, so if you wanted to run a longer train, you'd need another crew for every locomotive that was added on. So what was the solution to this? Well, what if you just made the engine bigger? What if it was so big that it replaced the job of two separate locomotives entirely? And that's just what they did. Railroads ordered superpower locomotives. They first increased the boilers of the locomotives to their absolute limits, barely fitting into the tunnels on their systems, but some engines became so large that they had to be articulated just to fit around corners and not...
Okay, I'm not gonna lie, it's kind of sick. Like, I get it. It's just like, I know it was done as a cost-saving measure, but like also, look how sick that looks. I'm just saying, maybe they weren't so wrong about this.
Not break the track. This is a great example of economies of scale, because if you were a railroad that could afford these crazy huge locomotives, you would save money in the long run, not having to pay for another crew and not having to pay for a second locomotive. Some railroads even continued this concept of singular massive locomotives into the diesel era.
We're a great big rolling railroad, one that everybody knows.
Welcome to the Union Pacific stockholder meeting. As you can see, the profits go up when the locomotive gets bigger. So, you can see where this is going. It can't go wrong. We just have to make them bigger still. Anyway, enough of that.
Once again, hear me out. it's kind of cool. Like, it's kind of cool looking. It's not just that it's like more profitable and probably way harder to, navigate, and it's also super sweet looking.
That tangent. Let's get back to talking about the Econ Explained video. Alright, now we have to talk about the Chinese high-speed rail system, and there's a weird pivot to it while talking about economics.
The Chinese government has built out over 40,000 kilometers of high-speed rail in the past 2 decades.
Oh yeah, Economics Explained is the fucking Aussie guys, the Aussie neo-libs, right? China, they've done a lot of high-speed kilometer trains, right?
They assumed as they built more that every extra kilometer would become cheaper.
Am I hearing Westerner cope? I don't know. Sounds a little bit like it.
But it didn't. It got more expensive as the country started to single-handedly drive up global iron ore prices to fuel development projects like this. The rail lines also went from making short, obvious connections between major population centres across accommodating terrain to long, dumb connections between remote villages with small populations.
Yeah, really dumb. How dare they? I love when... Dude, I fucking love when neo-libs are just like, it's so stupid. Why did they do that? Like, imagine getting mad at a country that is trying to quite literally do something that you consider dumb because that something is like offering accessibility in the interest of even development across the board, even to rural areas. It's literally the point. I hate this argument because, one, it's silly from a humanitarian perspective, but it's also fucking stupid because all matter of infrastructure could be considered in the same wavelength. You can literally look at every dollar that is spent on infrastructure and go, wow, that's dumb. Why'd you build a road there? Well, I don't know, because maybe you can do commerce inevitably down the line. Or, obviously, in the short term, it's fucking good for the people that's living there.
Over mountain passes and deserts.
Ah yes, surely no other country has built a dumb, huge network over large swaths of land to places that basically have no people in them. Yep, never happened in history. Yep, nope, never before.
The cost of providing high-speed rail never got low enough to make it competitive with airlines, which are much faster over a country as big as China, and in many cases, cheaper too. This blunder has left the Chinese government-run state railway group with $900 billion worth of barely affordable debt.
I love looking at, this is why I don't, yeah, sure, you can not consider China to be a socialist country, right? Maybe you don't consider China to be a socialist country or whatever. But ultimately, yeah, half the time you're analyzing Chinese development from the perspective of neoliberal or neoclassical economics, and you're like, well, this doesn't make sense from this perspective. It's like, yeah, exactly. You know what else doesn't make sense? The fucking postal service, okay? Yeah, it doesn't make sense. The United States Postal Service doesn't make sense from a capitalist perspective, except if you don't have it, then you don't get medicine, okay? Like, you literally will not get medicine in rural areas, the very areas that are likely to vote in people that will then inevitably cripple the USPS, okay? Like, that's how it works. It's not supposed to operate with efficiency and profit in mind, okay? It's supposed to just operate because some things are just supposed to happen so that people can survive and live.
That's alone bigger than the GDP of most countries in the world that could have been avoided with a better understanding of economies of scale.
The Chinese high-speed rail system does have problems, but usually Westerners pick apart the wrong issues because they're trying to cope with their own country's inability to build any comparable rail infrastructure. But before you say that I'm simping for the Chinese government, let's talk about some of the biggest flaws in the Chinese high-speed rail system. So we've all heard about Wuhan, China, but have you ever looked at it on a map? Well, here's the majority of its metro area. You can see here the city center along with most of its density. Now look at where the high-speed rail station is, 4 miles or 6.5 kilometers away from the city center. This is generally not how you build high-speed rail. Stations are usually located inside of city centers because one of the major advantages to trains over planes is being able to easily go from city to city without a transfer. It's super impressive that China built their entire network out incredibly quickly.
You can't think China is socialist. I mean, I think that all of the aspects of Chinese development that I appreciate are not necessarily about giving workers the means of production or anything when in the most Marxist term, but it's aspects of socialization. Okay? It's even development. It's urbanizing and moving people into big cities. These are all conducted by a centralized power that is doing it at the behest of its citizens. They're not doing it with immediate profit in mind. They're doing it because it's an economy that is planned, and it's an economy that is supposed to yield better outcomes for as broad of a population as possible. Okay? Now, there are also aspects of Chinese governance or Chinese existence that I think are not great. Okay? One of those aspects is that when the government is running all of the major corporations, they have improved workplace conditions year over year, but still nowhere near as competitive as the rest of the planet. It's significantly better than you expect it is if you live in the, Foxconn net era of Chinese factory conditions, but it's still not there. It's not there. And a country that is supposed to be worker focused is still, should be doing more with respect to improving workplace conditions.
But one of the sacrifices that they had to make to do this was to locate primary stops for individual cities far outside of the city centers. It's a design choice you have to make when you don't want to spend the time and money designing complex ways to build through city centers of metro areas, figuring out how to displace the least amount of people, businesses, and transit routes while staying on time. But let's compare this to a classical high-speed rail station. Here's Tokyo's main station.
Oh,
right
so
in the center
sick.
of the city, and it connects easily with all the other major
Oh my
services
God.
throughout
Oh God, it's so incredible, dude. It's so awesome. Sorry.
the region. And then you look back at another Chinese city, Jiangzhou, and notice how the main density of the metro is 5 miles or 8 kilometers away from the high-speed rail station. This is the main flaw of the Chinese high-speed rail network, not any monetary issues. Speaking of, let's talk about the most common myth and trope of Westerners failing to understand China's investment into its rail network. So, roll back the clocks a bit to 2008, when the world went to shit because some bankers failed to do their jobs and capitalism failed. Most countries took it upon themselves to reinvest in business and into the public to stimulate the economy again. The United States insisted upon bailing out the banks and businesses that had failed, and barely gave any money back to the public or back to public works projects. The little money that did go to public works mainly went to highways and other streetcar projects. Before the Obama-era stimulus package, the bank bailout ended up totaling $700 billion. Let's remember that number now. The Chinese government decided to choose a different path. Closing in on $900 billion since 2008, China has been devoted to spending its money and labor on building out its high-speed rail system. I've seen many people on here questioning and screaming that China has gone so far into debt over this decision, and it confuses the hell out of me. Yes, a government's currency, and specifically loans, are a form of debt, but these are backed up by the country's economy and military. So when a government decides to spend a ton of money on a public works project, it is technically using debt. But how is this any different from the US bailing out the...
Or not even that. It's literally the same as like a company. It's also the same as, well, it's a little bit different than a company because, like, you just, as a government, you have more power to do so, especially if you're a government like the United States of America in, like, printing money, which we have been doing almost permanently until this last 4 years, I would say, or last couple of years. But you spend money on your own business. You take out loans on your own business. The reason why you do that and you go into debt is so you can grow your business. Even this is a concept that even capitalists understand. They just can't comprehend it when it comes down to the government doing it to itself. We spent $880 million on the Pentagon, billion, you mean, not million, on the Pentagon this year, What is a better deal, China's high-speed rail system or our own bloated, idiotic military that can't find 60% of its assets? Yeah. Shouts out to Dianne Feinstein for voting for that. That was really cool. She's a real girl boss.
The banks for $700 billion. I'd actively say that China got a better bargain out of more useful infrastructure than we got out of bailing out rich people. Plus, it's not like the U.S. hasn't dropped a dubious wad
being
of
so naive. Explain what you mean by that, please. I would love to hear it.
cash on large projects before. Also, it's incredibly stupid to claim that a public works project, let alone a public infrastructure project, is actively failing or hasn't succeeded if it hasn't made a profit or canceled out the government funds used to build it. All right now, class, let's say it together. Public infrastructure does not have to make a profit. I hate this mentality. If you use this definition, that means
Highways are also non-profitable. We should abolish highways. We should blow them up. Why would you build a highway ever?
that the entire U.S. interstate system is a failure and that it's not useful economically at all to the United States, which we know is false. The U.S. interstate system is not even close to making a profit, but no one questions its usefulness at all. The same can be applied to the Chinese high-speed rail system. But as we know, government...
Or even, sewers. Yeah. Sanitation. Can't believe we're spending money on sanitation. Really fucked up. God, you joke. We joke here, but Americans are so fucking stupid, honestly. Oh my God. I could see like a municipality advocating against it like they did in New Hampshire. I feel like that is what we should look forward to in our not so distant future, where America's going to sit around and be like, perhaps we should abolish the sanitation department. The USPS loses billions each year. The fuck you mean lose? Who's the CEO? The Postmaster General. Look at Jackson, Mississippi. Their water system has failed. Allentown, Pennsylvania sold their water for money for police pensions. I wish I was joking. Oh my God.
Owned and nationalized companies scare and confuse the average economist. I assume that your country is full of a bunch of turbo neo-lib dorks because Australia used to have a very cool nationalized railway before y'all got rid of it. But next, let's listen to what Econ...
Also, there is... Every single country has... Every single country, just like the United States, is resting on the laurels of the New Deal. Like the infrastructure that was built many, many years ago. Okay? Every other social democracy that is, of course, inevitably eroding away all of the good parts of that social democracy while keeping only the bad parts, i.e. the exploitation of the global south and advocacy for American imperialism, they privatize things that were previously nationalized, and they're like the people's quality of life suffers as a consequence of that. Okay? Something similar has happened to the railroad system in the UK, as I have just learned, has happened in Australia as well. It's unsurprising.
Explained has to say about highways and induced demand. All right, let's listen to him again.
The induced demand theory was popularised by a study conducted by Giles Duranton and Matthew Turner titled The Fundamental Law of Road and Congestion. The paper compared the daily kilometres of interstate highway driving with the total lane kilometres of interstates across the United States. The paper found that between 1983 and 1993, interstate lanes grew by 32%, while driving grew by 77%. Between 1993 and 2003, lanes grew by 18% and driving grew by 46%. So it does seem like an increase in road capacity leads to an increase in road usage, but that might be making the mistake of assuming that correlation equals causation.
This is the part of the video that made me want to make a rebuttal. There are so many issues with the framing of highways and induced demand that it became frustrating to even listen to this.
Britain has privatized sewage and now there's shit in the Thames. Yeah, that's how it used to be. Well, before they do a massive cleanup project. It used to be like so shitty, the They-Thems River. It would just like smell bad all the fucking time. That's sick.
This video. The problem that Econ Man is assuming is that road use is elastic and it isn't linked to an inherent demand to commute to important places, geographic places. But let's let him continue to dig himself into a hole here.
Its methodology was also questionable. It measured interstate kilometres travelled. Building out more interstates might make people use those roads more, but that doesn't mean that there are more cars overall, because a lot of that traffic would have been taken away from non-interstate roads, which were not measured in the study. Driving on these kinds of roads is actually worse for everyone, because it's slower for drivers and causes more noise and air pollution closer to where people actually live. Even if we assume that this research is absolutely flawless, this is not the argument for induced demand that you think it is. More roads won't create more congestion unless they are designed very poorly, and reducing the supply of roads...
Is he doing the real capitalism hasn't been tried yet, but road edition, where it's like time and time again, in every single circumstance, we know that more roads, more lanes on a highway has led to worse traffic congestion because then more cars are on the road. He's literally doing the please one more lane meme, like just one more. It's like, I know guys, hold up. I know we've seen it. I know there is empirical evidence to suggest that it is the exact opposite. And I know that you have felt it, right? Because if you've lived long enough, you've seen your highways get more lanes. And yet traffic congestion has gotten worse. But let's try it again one more time.
Won't ease congestion either.
So let's start with the first concept that this video touches on, that induced demand doesn't necessarily generate traffic, but instead just creates more efficient road users, whatever that means. Well, the issue with this is that unlike studying a graph or a figure, there are usually
99% of city planners give up one lane before solving traffic. I love that. That's such a good meme, dude.
usually physical locations that people want to commute to and from, places that cannot be found on a highway. So let's let Professor Allen show us up on the board what he means. So this is our highway, and this is the places people want to go. Generally, places people want to go are in a city. So if we wanted to, say, make it easier for people to get into the city,
that's how you know he's a Jersey Philly boy right here. Look at that fat ass Wawa. He's got Bike Mafia, Overpriced Hipster Bar, IPAs only, the NIMBY, Shared Assets, State-Sponsored Cat Cafe, Leftist Infighting Arena, Pronoun Police Headquarters, Model Train Store. But more importantly, the top of the hour ad break is upon us, and I was just doing a derailment for no reason. Get it? That's a rail meme because we're watching Alan Fisher.
you'd think that the easiest thing to do would be to add more lanes to a highway.
Sheet says unlimited soft serve for $1. Yeah, I get it. Okay, I get it. You want the obesity situation to be worse. I understand. Michael from Pennsylvania. Yeah, look at that. An advocacy for Sheets is an advocacy to continue the obesity problem in the United States of America. That's what I feel.
And that's what's called inducing demand, because we'll take this little 2-lane road and we'll make it a bit bigger. We'll make it into...
Wait a minute. It seems like the bottle's growing, but the bottleneck is the same. And a chatter said that earlier, and I thought it was brilliant, so I stole it from the chatter. Good job, whoever chatter who said that. Wait, hold on.
To a nice 3-lane road. Nice, wide, fast 3-lane road. But one problem still remains with our road, because in the places that people want to go, which are in a city, you still have your city street layout. And with that city street layout, you still have city street speeds and you have your city street sizes, which are smaller than a highway. And that will always
I figured it out. Nuke every American city and make the cities also have wider roads. Oh, wait, we fucking did that already. God damn it. What we should do is just kill every pedestrian so that there's never a sidewalk and there's no need for sidewalks in general. And we should allow it. We should make it legal to drive on sidewalks. Guys, I figured it out. You should be able to drive on sidewalks, and if a pedestrian is walking on the sidewalk, it's called pay walking, okay? Like jaywalking, which is fucking ridiculous to begin with. Imagine walking in a city and then getting punished for it. Now we call it pay walking. If you're walking on a sidewalk, a car can kill you, and if you're walking on that sidewalk, it's illegal for you to walk on the sidewalk now. Therefore, we just opened up even another additional lane. I think that's good. This is how we do it.
Cause, no matter how many lanes you add, it will always cause a bottleneck heading to the places that people want to go. So, no matter how many lanes you add to your highway to fix traffic, you're always going to have these bottlenecks because the places that people want to go are not a giant parking lot or highway. They are these cool little places that are without cars.
Seems like the cool little places are a problem. It seems like our cities, which were originally not designed for car-dependent infrastructure, need to be even less designed for walkers and pedestrians. I'm just saying the solution is simple. Yeah, exactly. Replace cities with Bass Pro Shops. Replace every city with the Bass Pyramid. And then make the Bass Pyramid. It's like every city is now one big Bass Pyramid and also one big parking lot.
So you cannot induce your demand out of adding more cars. That's simply not possible. And
actually, fuck it. Replace the cities. I don't even want a city. I just want highways. Fuck it. Nuke the city, make it a highway, and then you can just go from one suburb to the next suburb in your car and then do a closed circuit like that. You know what I mean? Why would you go to a city anyway? Fuck the city. Nuke it. Libtards live there. I don't know. I don't like it. There's crime there. It's scary. And also, it's very hard for me to park my King Rancher. So fuck it. Just nuke the cities, actually.
Even if you say, oh, the 1% of highway added, 1% of cars are added. No, you will always have these bottlenecks. But there is one solution.
True.
That's right, you expected it. But let's talk about the one thing that highways do absolutely terribly compared to trains and transit. This is the Raritan River Amtrak Bridge. It carries the Northeast Corridor and the majority of the train traffic in New Jersey. It averages around 300,000 people traveling over it daily, and all with electric trains. And this is the Parkway Bridge over the same river, and it carries roughly the same amount of people per day as the Amtrak Bridge. But since cars and road infrastructure have terrible land use, it needs to be 380 feet wide with 21 lanes to accomplish the same throughput as the Northeast Corridor. Not only is this an insanely inefficient use of land, but it's also an insanely inefficient use of resources. And this is not even mentioning the crazy footprint of the off-ramps and the parking that is needed to accommodate one exit of it. Compare this exit to an equally busy New Brunswick train station, and you can see why highway infrastructure feels almost suicidal for resource management comparatively.
Absolutely.
And finally, we need to address the weird horniness that Econ Man seems to have for his car. First, listen to this.
Now, before we get into the problems with this theory, I want to make the big disclaimer, which is that while I love the creators and commentators calling for everybody to ride bikes or catch trains to get around, and I do understand the benefits of those.
Dude, oh my God, I love this. Oh yeah, dude, big disclaimer time. Cars actually represent individuality and individual freedoms. And it's not just me saying that. I learned that from American propaganda because that's how it was sold to America when we created this fucking hellscape. When we created this fucking bullshit hellscape that is a car-dependent infrastructure. That's right. Ay, 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 ay. By the way, that is literally the point. This is not a joke. Americans were sold a lie that that car-dependent infrastructure meant freedom. Okay? That's how we built the suburbs. That's how we built everything. That's how we fucking destroyed black neighborhoods to build highways over them or around them, to specifically partition them from other parts of the city. Oh.
As modes of transportation from an environmental and city planning perspective, I love my car. I love driving in an isolated cocoon of steel and leather, and it doesn't matter how compelling the economic argument is for using a train or a bus.
It's so much better to be in a fucking train. It's like, how have you not lived the glory of sitting on a fucking train and just playing with your Steam Deck or your phone or whatever the fuck, and with not a single worry? There's no parking. There's no need for any of the fucking, there's no congestion. You're not sitting in fucking traffic. There's no goddamn parking. Can I just mention? There's no parking, okay? And it just transports you directly into the middle of a city where there is an immediate transit opportunity to get on yet another train that will deliver you ultimately to wherever the fuck you need to go. It is the sickest, best, most awesome way to go anywhere. I'm serious. Don't even get me started on the SUV infestation. Those things are actually murder machines. I wouldn't mind my commute if I can nap during it. Yes, you can travel with a group comfortably larger than 4. Americans can't take guns from blind fascists. Long way to go to infrastructure. You can get fucking drunk and be on the train. You can get food on the train. You don't have to worry about being in a fucking accident every goddamn day. That's also true. Oh, God. Some trains will allow you to pee on them. The problem is a lot of people think, when they think trains in America, they are unfortunately limited by what American public transport and its what that offers to them. And that's like trauma and fear of the unknown. One, because Americans are not used to any kind of like diverse mixed income environment to exist in. Okay. They're just like, they don't, like, a lot of Americans live in cities, but there's still a fuck ton of Americans that live in hyper isolated environments. So the prospect of like being around a person, I had this conversation on Murat's birthday with some like libertarian dude. He was like, I don't get it. He's like, West Hollywood, for example, bitch, I was about to give you that example. No, West Hollywood is a great example of what I'm talking about. For all of its faults and failures, depending on what part of West Hollywood you're in, West Hollywood is still very much mixed income, full of apartments, okay? Now, a lot of those apartments are very expensive still, but they're not like the fucking luxury sky-high high-rises. They're like still, there's a lot of rent control apartments in this area. There's a lot of apartments that are still relatively affordable in comparison to plenty of these other places. No, it's not $5,000 a month. Shut the fuck up. Listen to me. Listen to me. Okay? Listen to the words I'm saying. I was talking to this guy, and he was like, I don't get it. Like, why the fuck don't you live in like a commune or something, like far away? Why don't you just like build a chateau in the middle of nowhere? You just like, you just like rip lines and broadband, deliver broadband to your home, and just like build a homestead or something. And I was like, why the fuck would I do that? Like, I like living around people. I enjoy living around people. I like it. I like walking around and seeing human beings. You know what I mean? Like, that's, no one's stopping you from talking, brother. Oh, shut up. No, the chatters that are writing dumb shit. That's the same argument as just move to another country, really? No, it's not, because like this person was just like shocked that I was living in such like a public area. You know what I mean? Like such a publicly accessible area. He's like, why the fuck are you doing this? And like, you're rich. What the fuck are you doing? Like, that's the dream. And I was like, nope, it's not my dream. It's not. I like living around other people. I feel more comfortable living around other people, living in close proximity to other people, than I would if I was living in like some isolated environment. I feel like the more isolated an environment I live in, okay, the worse my commentary would get too. I feel like it just, you start losing you start losing your grip on reality when you live far away from others. And a lot of Americans are experiencing this on a daily fucking basis. I don't want to be like fucking Joe Rogan. You know what I mean? Plus, I'm nowhere near as rich as he is, but still. Yo, you never leave your house? That's really funny you say that because, yes, to the untrained eye who looks at me streaming fucking 10 hours a day, 8 hours a day, 6 hours a day, it goes, yeah, what the fuck? You don't leave your house. Every moment that I'm not on camera, I'm not inside of my house usually. You know what I mean? And if I lived in an isolated area, it would take me hours to get to a place where I could be around other human beings. Do you see what I'm saying? That's the beauty of living in a city. That's the beauty of living in a city, that you could just easily walk outside, take a step outside of your door, and walk around.
Like, I have been caught out in bad weather and crammed into an overcrowded BO-scented metal box too many times in my life to ever give up something that can take me from door to door while I sing along to my own terrible music without getting judged.
Great job, man, destroying the entire credibility of your video within your video. But first, let's talk about this. Firstly, you are a YouTuber. Your commute is from the bedroom to the computer, with an optional stop in the kitchen. Majority of people in the world do not have this luxury, and along with this disclaimer that you put in the video, most people should realize that Econ Man here has the luxury of driving when he feels like it. When driving is an option, it's a lot of fun sometimes. I too enjoy the occasional back road drive through the mountains or hooning it up in a snow-filled parking lot. I had a manual Subaru for a while because of this. But I hated driving that same car every day for a commute to work. I cursed all the way home when I was stuck in traffic that I had.
Oh my God, driving fucking stick shift in traffic is just like awful.
No other transit option to take. I obviously think that cars will always exist in the future, but the idea is that we should build society around the idea that you don't need one to be able to get around.
I truly think Hasan could do so much good by covering Hunter Biden's child that he rejects. Her name is Navy Joanne Roberts. Hasan has such a huge following. This is our last hope. Please talk about Navy Roberts Biden. What?
Around and to be able to get to work and everything you need. And to get to that goal, we need to change a lot of how we do things. And
is she gonna die? Like, why? Yeah, say her name. Like, what's happening? Is she gonna die if we don't say her name? Like, what's going on? Look at their history. They've been spamming this for hours. No way, really? Are you Hunter Biden's forgotten daughter? Where is the guy? What's his username again? The one who was saying this?